rights, and it is shameful.
Thank you very much. Tom Hunt.
Thank you very much, Mr. Evans. I think I've waited a very long time to speak on this bill. In the second reading, I think I waited for 4 hours and didn't get called, and I've waited a good amount of time here today. So all it's done is maybe more determined to get my points across. And I have to say, I didn't sign any of the amendments that are in front of us today. I had some sympathy with many of the amendments, particularly 131, Amendment 131, my honourable friend and member for Devizes, and also my right honourable friend, a member for Middlesbrough and South East Cleveland, which is Amendment 132, and of course my very senior colleague, the honourable member for Stone, 133 and 134, and actually something might surprise some people, but I had a little bit of sympathy with my honourable friend, the member for East Wortham and Shoreham, actually, with his amendments 72, 73, 74 and 75. However, I don't think now is the right time to pursue such amendments until we've sorted out the scourge of illegal immigration that currently impacts this country. And so, of course, in a general sense, it wouldn't surprise people to know that I welcome the illegal migration bill. I think having a situation where we have 45,000 people a year illegally entering the country, mostly men, mostly young men, statistically proven, many from safe countries, safe origin countries, and of course every single one of them has gone through France and multiple other safe European countries where they've refused to claim asylum and they've decided to shop between different safe European countries, and they've come here and, you know what, actually having a dream of moving to the UK because of job opportunities and wanting to be, you know, an economic migrant is a very noble dream. But of course my advice to them would be to engage with our legal migration points-based system, and we will make a determination and whether your dream and our needs meet. Because of course we are the party that believes in controlling our borders. We are the party that believes in strong border controls. The Labour Party get incredibly sensitive when anybody suggests that they believe in open borders. But of course, you know, I simply say to them, show me the evidence. Show me the evidence that you believe in controlled immigration. Show me the evidence that you don't believe in open borders, because when I look at your record, every single thing you vote on is against precisely those things. So I don't think it is unreasonable for me and colleagues to come to the conclusion that you are in fact opposed to all border controls. As I say, show me the evidence. When I look at the Amendment 131, of course, a lot of us will remember when the Rwanda policy was first introduced, when it was first introduced. And a lot of us supported it because we saw what happened in Australia, and we saw that they had a massive problem with illegal immigration. And they went down a route of offshore processing, and today they don't have a massive problem with illegal immigration. It is quite simple. A few people opposite say, oh, Australia didn't work. Well, actually, we looked into it in detail and met Australian officials, it did work. And actually, we think that going ahead with the Rwanda policy would clearly, if it was given chance to work, provide a significant deterrent. It would save lives at sea. And it would enable us to have a compassionate, controlled asylum system, which most of us want. I think virtually all of us in this place want. So it was incredibly frustrating when we saw that despite the Brexit referendum, when we had a majority of people in this country expressing a wish to take back control of our borders, we had an elected Prime Minister looking to move forward a policy to do precisely that. But at the very last moment, even though our own courts okayed it, we had a foreign judge in another land thwarting the whole thing and coming up in the courts now for almost getting towards a year. The damage to that on our democracy, my constituents can see that. It is deeply damaging, and it is unsustainable state of affairs for us as a sovereign country to be in a situation where that is allowed to happen. And of course we were promised that the Nationality and Borders Bill, what became the Nationality and Borders Act, would resolve all of these issues. The reality is we're still standing here, and we still have tens of thousands of people a year entering this country illegally. And that foreign judge has been able to essentially mean that there were flights to Rwanda didn't get going, and how many crossings have come about as a result of that. We also have a situation where the High Court took 6 months to come to a conclusion. Hopefully next month we could have the Appeal Court giving it the green light, the Supreme Court don't call it in, and we could actually have flights going off next month. And then we'll see whether the approach works or not. I think that it will. in terms of the support there is for this, because we've heard lots of different honourable friends, honourable members talk about whether there's public support. Well, it's quite clear from what I've seen that there is public support for this bill in the country. In fact, I think the support for this bill in the country is overwhelming. And I also think, we all engage with our constituents, and I've engaged with mine, and actually the support for Miranda policy is also overwhelming. And the anger that has come about, and I won't talk to the amendment that is placed tomorrow with regards to hotel accommodation. I won't talk to that, but I will briefly. And this really strong opposition there was to the use of a hotel at a time where many of my constituents are struggling to get by, struggling to pay their energy bills, and they can see people who have illegally entered our country, mainly young men, in a 4-star hotel, 28 of my constituents who worked in that hotel being pressured to resign, and a wider economic impact in terms of a lack of bed space in the town, and they're appalled by it. Of course, others take different views, and obviously last weekend we had a number of Labour local councillors and the Labour MP candidate supporting the use of a hotel by those who enter our country illegally, which is quite an interesting view, and one that I'd actually advise them probably to change, bearing in mind that the surveys I've just done show that there's many people who still intend to vote Labour, I don't know why, but who actually have really hard-line views on immigration. So I suspect there's a risk that actually the conflict there might be exposed. Of course, I'll be playing my role to do that. But in terms of the issue to do with safe and legal routes, because we often hear from the Labour Party say, well, no, the problem is, if we have safe and legal routes, all of these problems will go away. But of course, what was fascinating was for the first time we had a shadow minister saying actually they do believe in a cap. It's the first time I've heard the Labour Party say that they would support a cap on safe and legal routes. But actually what that cap is, of course, we don't know what the cap would be. We also don't know because we know that if there were these safe and legal routes, that actually many people would fail through that route and they'd probably still try and enter our country illegally by small boat. Right. So what would the Labour Party do with those individuals in those circumstances? Of course, they don't know. The key thing here, and of course we come to safe and legal routes, but I do think the approach of my honourable friend earlier in terms of safe and legal routes, I do think it's a place we need to get to. It's a place we need to get to. But I think we have to take the public with us. And right now, understandably, the majority of the country are furious about illegal migration. They are furious about people jumping the queue. So we need to deal with that. And once we deal with that, we can move to that place of talking about safe and legal routes. But I think right now would be too soon. And I also talk to the fact that there are hundreds of millions of people in the world who would like to move to our country of course there's hundreds of millions who would like to move to our country who could conceivably get refugee status. So if we talk about a cap to safe and legal routes, we then need to talk about prioritisation. We need to talk about prioritisation and the question, which is it right that we prioritise young single men from Albania over, for example, some of the refugees I met 2 weekends ago. Where was I 2 weekends ago? I was at the Rohingya camp in Bangladesh. It was the third time I've been there. And you know who I spoke to? Overwhelmingly women and children who had fled directly from Myanmar. Some of the women have been raped. Some of their dads have been killed. Their brothers have been killed. And when I asked them what they wanted, all they said is they want to go home safely. They don't have a choice about shopping between different European countries about where they go. They don't have that choice. And the reality is, I want us to have compassion as a country. I want us to have a cap. I want us to have safe and legal routes. And you know what? Once we get control of the system, I might be happy with that cap being quite high. And actually, I might want us to play our role. But the reality is right now, for every person who comes in illegally from somewhere such as Albania, realistically, because of limited resources, that's one less person from somewhere like the Rohingya camp that we can support. They are working directly against the interests of some of the most vulnerable in the world. That is a fact. So the idea that so I'm incredibly pro genuine refugees, and this argument, another argument we heard earlier, which is that I think once we get the small boat situation sorted out, once we tackle illegal migration, we can put in place a cap driven by compassion, and if that cap, if there's an unforeseen disaster somewhere and there's a huge earthquake in another country, then I'm sure we'll be able to come back to this place to ask for this place, our elected chamber, to extend that cap. And you know what? I think most people in the country would support that. But where do we want to get to? We want to get to a place where we take a large number of some of the world's most desperate people. But to get there, we've got to get control of the system. We've got to go over people smugglers. And I know that this bill seems tough, but it is the only way. It is the only plan. So I'm proud to speak. I'm proud to speak in favour of the amendment, particularly from my honourable friend, Amendment 131. We've talked. Winston Churchill has been brought up by the opposition. The idea that if he was around today, he would support a situation where our democratic chamber was thwarted by foreign judges undermining a law brought forward by our elected government is for the birds. Would not be the case. And I rest what I've said. Thank you very much.
Nick Whitley.
Very much, Mr. Chairman. I rise to speak